worked on staff the whole summer. And the assistant director for the campground, he lived on the campground. He had a house there. His family was growing. And so we were going to put an addition on his house. Now I can say that I built that addition. I helped build it. My hand, I drove the nails. I snapped the chalk lines. I mixed the concrete and poured it. I nailed the cedar shingles in. I mean, there are lots of other people out there, not by myself. Now, while I can say that I built it, I cannot say that I built it, in the sense that if they left me to design and build that thing, it would look like a backyard fort, which they probably wouldn't want to live in. It looked like a treehouse back there, because I don't know what I'm doing. I know I appear like I do. I know a lot of you think I'm, this guy's mechanical. Come on, you can do anything. That's not true. None of you think that. But I can't do that. I don't know what I'm doing. But I can take direction. I had strength and energy and ability. But I had to be told what to do. I didn't make up the plans. I didn't design the building at all. And because I didn't, it's beautiful. And so while I had the strength to build, I didn't have the sense to make something lasting. It's that way when it comes to the Lord. The coronation of Christ as King and the drawing up of the Constitution in the Sermon on the Mount, that was God's doing. You see here it says, verse 22, David saying, the stone which the builders rejected, this stone which to them looked insufficient for what they were trying to build, they rejected that stone. Talking about himself, but also looking forward to the person of Jesus Christ. People here on earth, they looked at Christ and they said, Christ, that's a valuable piece, that's a valuable stone, but that's not the stone, that's not the kind of person or philosophy or methodology upon which we think we can build something here in Israel. And so they rejected him as the chief cornerstone. But God always wanted Christ as king. He always wanted the Sermon on the Mount to be the constitution for the new kingdom that he was building. And so in verse 23 he says, this is the Lord's doing and it's marvelous in our eyes. And so you get the idea here that in our lives, God is the architect and we are the laborers. It's not your responsibility to decide how to proceed with the church. It's not your responsibility to decide how are we going to win the world for Christ. Who can I persuade to do this job or that job? Who can we talk into serving this office or that office? God is in charge. He's in control. He's the architect, and things which don't make sense to us make perfect sense to him. We can't trust our own sensibilities. And so I really think we should be content to be laborers and not architects. And this is essentially the life of the Apostle Paul. Paul had incredible energy for the Lord. He was zealous, and he was powerful. But he didn't know what he was doing. He was stoning, or participating in the stoning of the very people who God had commissioned and ordained. He didn't know what he was doing. But when he was broken and blinded and reformed, then he saw himself not as an architect, but as a laborer. And he then got with God's program. So I just say that to say, all the jobs I've ever had, and I've had lots of different jobs in my life, including this one, I never show up to work in the morning and say, well, what should I do today? And some of you have had jobs where you're the owner, you're the person, you can do that. But I've never had a job like that. Every job I've ever had, when I show up to work, I say, what does the boss want me to do today? That's the attitude of the Christian. You don't wake up as a Christian and say, well, what am I going to do today? We wake up saying, God, what would you have me to do today? I don't have any ingenuity or insight. It's all with you. I have energy. And I want to make the most and redeem my energy. And so I submit to you. One of my favorite biblical evictions is there's the story in the book of Nehemiah. Some of you might remember it, where they've come back from exile and they're rebuilding the wall and the temple. And the high priest at the time was a man named Eliashib. And Eliashib has a relative, his name's Tobiah. And Tobiah, I guess, didn't have any place to live or something. So Eliashib just moved him into the temple. And there was a room designed for grain offerings and things. And he just moved all that stuff out and put his furniture in there. The guy just started living in the temple. Well, Nehemiah comes back from visiting Artaxerxes, and he's like, what's going on here? Somebody's living in the temple. He said, get that out of there. And he threw his stuff out, and he restored that room to its initial purpose. And he scolded Eliashib and Tobiah both. I really think that in the church, in our own lives today, there are a lot of people taking up residence, there are a lot of ideas taking up residence that don't belong. They're worldly ideas, they're worldly wisdoms that are being employed in sacred places, and they just don't belong there. And it was Nehemiah's job to get that stuff out of there and to restore it to what God intended that room for. And that's the key, I think, to our lives being changed, is restoring what makes sense to God in His church. The second act of God as hammer and we as nails. God is the author and we are the readers. Look at verse 24. It's a famous verse, of course. And David says, "This is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." This is the day the Lord has made. The word day here, incidentally, is not the simple passage of a 24-hour period of time. But he's talking about the occurrences and events of our time, the thing that's going on. We still use this term today. You say, back in my day. Back in my day, we didn't have shopping carts. We took the wheelbarrow back to the back 40. That kind of flavor. So anyway, that's what we did back in my day. You understand, that's what he's talking about. This is the day. These are the events and occurrences which the Lord has brought about. Let us rejoice and be glad in them. What David asserts here is that the rejoicing, and this is what I love about this, David is not saying, I'm rejoicing in what's going on today. The fact that he's rejoicing is born of the idea and the fact that the one who's authored the events is the Lord. Do you see that? In verse 20 it says, this is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. There are certain events that take place in the world that I rejoice at naturally. But there are a lot of things that happen in the world that are vexing to me and that drive me bananas and upset me. But the point David's making is, it's not the events that cause me to rejoice, but the fact that all these events and occurrences are being brought about and knit together by a sovereign, loving Lord who has the best interest of those whom He loves at heart. And that all these things are working together for the good of those who love Him and for the good of His kingdom. And I trust that. And so, David's saying, whether I'm being hounded out into the desert by Saul, or whether or not the ark has been taken away from the city, I'm going to rejoice in everything, because I know that this is the day, these are the events and occurrences which God has brought about. It's God who's in direction. I like Jane Austen. I like reading her. She didn't write very many books, and I've read them. I like them. She's a good author, and I trust her. I guess that's why I like her. Some of you are familiar with the story that she wrote called Persuasion. You ever read that? The story of Persuasion, there's a young girl of 17 who's courted by a young man who's decidedly below her station in life. His family is below her family. And he proposes to her, he courts her, and she has affection for him and he for her. But she's persuaded to reject him because he's just below her. And it wouldn't be a good match for the two families. Well, anyway, he's spurned. He goes off, joins the Navy. He goes away, and in the intervening years, he does very well in the Navy, and he becomes a hero, and he gets very, very wealthy, makes a lot of money. And in the meantime, the next 10 years, her family has a lot of reverses and falls apart. And so after 10 years, when the story resumes, he comes back, he's wealthy, noble, a hero, and now her family's in disgrace. They have to move out of their house and rent some quarters somewhere. And now he's being courted by every maiden in the land. And she's in, and so it's a story. And I'm reading this book, and there's several times I'm thinking, I just need to put this away. I feel badly for her. She's mortified over and over again. She's real good about putting everybody in real awkward situations. He's embittered, she's mortified, and the whole thing looks like, this is a terrible story. And there were several times I thought to myself, I'm not going to read it